now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now. Make sure you, in fact, let people know you're senators. I'm not going to answer the question because the question is. The question is, Justice, the radical left. Will you shut up, man? Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Gentlemen, I think
this is so unprecedented.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
They
47 years, you've done nothing. They understand.
All right.
Remember that debate and all the interruptions? That was the first time that they debated. That was September 29th, 2020. Let's talk about the lessons from that debate for this rematch. John Dickerson, well, clearly the microphone is going to change things tonight, so there won't be as many interruptions.
That will change things. It's questionable about what Donald Trump learned. We know, well, those of us who covered the Trump presidency, is that there were often moments where his aides, his family went to him, said, you got to tone it down. You've got to be more presidential. And it would stick for very short periods of time. But his gut is something he believes in. Aides have variously talked about his times at rallies as creating a sense of giving him oxygen. He wants to be that person. That person was the one interrupting Joe Biden. The problem for Trump in that debate was that people thought, and the polling showed this, we don't want 4 more years of that in our living room. Joe Biden was there as a representative of returning to the norms of the presidency. We'll see how, and if any of those lessons conveyed to tonight.
Because people thought, oh my gosh, it's the pandemic. Life is too chaotic. I kind of like this Joe Biden. He seems more calming than Donald Trump. Those were the stylistic, at least, differences. There was a lot more, obviously, but that's what I'm saying, that debate and the chaoticness of it, I think, probably stuck with people.
And as I recall, Nora, at the time when he said, because we're all raised in houses where your parents tell you, do not tell anyone to shut up. At the time when he said shut up, I think most people actually understood why he felt that, because he was so exasperated trying to get a word in edgewise. I'd be curious to know where in the debate that moment came. I don't remember it as we sit here today.
It was about halfway through.
It was halfway through.
And even in the room, because we were up in the rafters watching this whole thing, you could just feel it in the room. Everyone was just like, oh gosh, is this what it's going to be like, when they meet again? The fact that the microphone is muted, first of all, we've all heard from people, sources, friends, family, how excited they are that they're finally implementing that rule.
Who do you think?
So how does that change? I don't know.
You don't.
And I really wonder if either of them has practiced for that phenomenon, because our friends at CNN pointed out yesterday how it's going to work. And if it goes as they say it will, you literally will see lips moving, but you will not be able to hear them. So do they practice facial expressions? Do they, scoff, or do they just stand there and shake their head? No, it's not true. They're going to have to wait their turn. And that changes the dynamic in all these things, because what do we always seize on? It's those moments of friction.
But and that is the theater, and that is about the impression. And if you remember, in that period in time back in 2020, Joe Biden was running on this argument of competence in the midst of chaos, restoring order. I mean, we didn't have a vaccine then. We were in the midst of this pandemic that had upended our lives. And that's what's so interesting about Anthony's polling about the economy, and people remembering it fondly under Donald Trump, forgetting he was the one who shut down the economy because of what was happening. But I think in our polling, one of the things that's so interesting, Ed, is when we talk about the seriousness of the issues facing the country now, and we are only hearing the theater, we haven't heard, when you look at the polling, 75% of voters say Trump should explain his plans for the future. 69% say Biden should. That implies they haven't heard the affirmative argument for the future of the country.
We haven't heard from either of them.
Well, in fact, the studies have been done by even conservative-leaning economists that Trump's plan to expand tariffs would actually lead to an increase in inflation, correct? Yes. And so that is something that hasn't, that sort of sharp policy debate that I think that voters are craving. Wait a minute, I do want to know what their plan is for the future. How are they going to make my life better and my children's lives better? What are they going to do for me, the taxpayer?
And also, this goes back to, did you prepare for the debate or didn't you prepare for the debate? You can't riff your way through a presidency. You can't just wing it and be kind of in the moment when you're dealing with things like alliances that need to be tended when you have invasions happening. You can't just decide on your economic policy on the fly. When you've got massive moving forces globally, also with the advent of artificial intelligence, you have to have a plan. You have to think things through. You have to anticipate. And all of that comes down to this stylistic difference between the two of them. So it is theater review, but it attaches to a crucial thing about the presidency, which is that it is a job that you cannot just improvise your way through.
Don't you find it hard to believe that he's done no preparation? I mean, I know he says that he's prepared for this his whole life when he goes out on rallies, but this is such a big moment for both of them. Because the research, I know Margaret and Nora are like, yeah, I can kind of believe that he has to do that.
What in his previous behavior would lead you to believe that he's cracking the books?
Because I just think that this is different. There is so much at stake for both of them. There always is. But in this particular case, Joe Biden has to bring it to show, look, that I'm physically capable of doing this. Donald Trump has to show that I can be, quote, presidential, that I can, quote, behave. Well, you can do that.
Yeah.
They both have something to prove to the audience tonight.
We're going to find out in less than 25 minutes.
And I can't wait.
I know, exactly. And when we come back, we're going to talk about these key battleground states, how each campaign thinks they can achieve victory in the race to 270 electoral votes. Remember, that's what it's about, these 7 battleground states. We'll talk about it. You're watching CBS News.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Okay, let's go.
You guys good?
Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going. The clock, it's ticking.
Off we go.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
It can help us with medical discovery, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education. Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bring you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News streaming.
Welcome to America Decides, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to Debate Night coverage here on CBS. We are just moments away from that debate, and we're learning President Biden has just arrived at the debate site. After the debate, President Biden is going to head to North Carolina for a rally tomorrow. North Carolina is one of 7 states where this election will be decided. Now, of those 7 states, Joe Biden won 6 of them in the last election. The one state that he did not win was North Carolina, right, Major Garrett? But I know you're going to break it down for us because I am so obsessed with these 7 states.
Exactly. Good evening, Nora. Good evening, everyone. I know it feels a little early to bring back our old friend, the Electoral College map, but look, we have a presidential debate in June, so it gets early around here with the campaign 2024. So, stop me if you've heard this before. Who wins this election is going to come down to 7 battleground states. Nora just referred to them. What are they? Let's go through them once again. Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and as Nora just mentioned, North Carolina, as well as Georgia. Now, in 2020, Biden won 6 of those states. So we asked each campaign, what do they think is the easiest path for them to achieve victory? Let's first start with the incumbent President Biden. Now, if he wins all the lean and likely Democratic states on our friend the map, he just needs to win the states the campaign affectionately calls the blue wall. That's Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. The president would also, again, need to pick up the 1 electoral vote from Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. That would put him at exactly 270 electoral votes. We all know that's the magic number. Now let's flip to the Trump side of the equation. If he wins all the lean and likely Republican states he won 4 years ago, the campaign feels their clearest path to victory: hold North Carolina, which he won in 2020, and then flip battleground states Georgia and Pennsylvania. That would bring Trump right to 270. Of course, we all know the easiest path to victory is not always how elections play out. So here's at least one more scenario. Let's say Trump carries every state he won in 2020, along with the same electoral votes from Nebraska and Maine. That would put him at 235 electoral votes. If Trump wins the 3 states he lost in 2020 by less than 1%, that's Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia, he would have 272 electoral votes and be returned to the Oval Office. Nora and everyone, back to you.
All right, Major. Thank you. Gail?
Thank you, Major. We are joined now by CBS News political contributors, Democratic strategist Joel Payne and Republican strategist Terry Sullivan. Guys, good to see you both.
Hey there,
Hello,
Gail.
hello. Hello. Joel, we're going to start with you. What do you think Biden needs to do tonight to win this debate?
Well, I think, Gail, there are 2 C's: contrast and consolidation. The president needs to focus on bringing home those core Democratic constituencies that have waned a bit in public opinion polls. And I think focusing on abortion, focusing on democracy, I think he'll hope to accomplish that.
Thank you for clicking on. It is Liars Club Watch Party. Starts at 9 p.m. And the lead up to the official start of tonight's first debate between a sitting president and a former president. Normally, presidents serve 2 terms, therefore they're not eligible for re-election, so they're not in debates. And this is the first time this has ever happened, where we've had a sitting president and a former president involved in a debate. So, good friend, the Twitter scroll section, if you will, before Trump, and asked about Taylor Swift. He says, I think she's beautiful, very beautiful. Find her very beautiful. I think she's liberal. She probably doesn't like Trump, but I hear she's very talented. But I think she's very beautiful, actually, unusually beautiful. So there you go. I don't know. To me, that just came across as really creepy. But who knows? And tomorrow night we're gonna feast in a park watching a band, and he's got a sign. He makes a sign and says, "Will you let me play guitar with you?" And well, let me just in case we get swamped tomorrow night, let me run it up. kind of like tonight's debate. It could be incredible, or it could be, I'm not anticipating incredible, but see, you make a sign. Okay, hang on a second. All right, hang on just a second. We don't have video, or we don't have audio. Let me reconnect here and see if we do. Again, we'll be starting the coverage of the Liars Club coming up here shortly. In the meantime, let's see if this works. There we go. I think we're on. This is what the kid does.
Yes! Everyone!
We don't get a copyright from that. Let's see what's going on here. All right, thank you. So make a sign. That's the word on that. White House press corps had to petition CNN to open up the debate studio to reporters, and the reporters have to watch a feed from a building across the street. Now, the reporters wanted to be there because they believed there may be a medical emergency involving one of the presidential candidates, requiring on-scene reporting and coverage. So a New Hampshire man on trial for threatening to kill presidential candidates has himself been found dead while the jury was deciding his verdict, from the Associated Press. And this is looking at the forecast for July 4th. These are the areas recommending to be avoided. We are going to have a heat wave coming. Just saying. And another mysterious reflective monolith has popped up, this time in Colorado. This one's in northern Colorado. There was one last week we reported on just outside of Las Vegas, Nevada, that Nevada authorities dug up, and not sure what they did with it, but we'll find out what happens with this one. This one popped up again, northern Colorado, and reminiscent of the Georgia stones outside of Atlanta that were mysteriously destroyed not long ago. The White House press corps again petitioned CNN to open up the debate. Medical emergency involving one of the presidential candidates requiring on-scene reporting. The candidates are 81 and 78 years old, so maybe that's, but it just seems like, especially when you add this. Tonight, CNN is implementing a 1 to 2 minute delay for tonight's presidential debate instead of the standard 7-second delay, potentially allowing time to edit parts of the broadcast, which to me is just how the kids say, sus. That's a little bit sus to me. A standard 7-second delay, that's generally only for the F-bomb, all right? Any other words, they'll slip out in that 7-second delay of live broadcasts. And I really don't think that these two guys are planning on dropping a lot of F-bombs. I mean, they may, but I'm not anticipating that. But a 1 to 2 minute delay sure seems like it would be opportunities to fix things. Just saying. Chris is going to be on with us tomorrow night. Make sure you have hit the notification bell so you'll know when we're on, if we're on at 9 or if we're on at 10. That depends on the concert series in the park tomorrow night ahead of that. But we're going to be talking about CIA involvement in South American countries with what happened in Bolivia, with what's going on in Haiti, as well as other things tomorrow night. And Luis Martinez says U.S. officials have confirmed that amphibious assault ship USS Wasp. We've talked about the Wasp and the 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit before. They're headed back to the Eastern Mediterranean, and they are there to serve as a deterrent, according to Luis Martinez. Other sources of mine said they are there to facilitate the impending evacuation of U.S. people from Lebanon. So again, Luis Martinez, he is from ABC News, I think, ABC News senior Pentagon reporter. So Pentagon prepares to evacuate Americans from Lebanon. That's from NBC. So all of this stuff's been dropping while everybody's prepared for this debate. Everybody's focusing on this debate. This is one night where a vast majority of the nation is going to be focused on this 1 hour and a half period. Now, there will be some that decide, you know what, let's have some fun with this. Let's have a little bit of a contest amongst ourselves, especially if we're doing a watch party. And you might do something like this. Drink when Biden either calls Trump a convicted felon. He says, listen, folks, he tells a childhood story that probably didn't happen. Again, we're talking about the Liars Club tonight. He says, we're protecting, saving democracy. He makes a joke about his age. He starts a sentence but ends with a completely different thought. Anytime those happen, take a drink. In the case of Trump, he says, people are saying, or everyone is saying, he says, Sleepy Joe, if he says the Biden crime family, if he says, believe me, if he insults Jake Tapper, if he does jazz hands or other excessive hand motions, pointer finger up doesn't count. You take a drink. And then if either of them freezes for 3 seconds, says this is the most important election, or accuses the other of anti-Semitism, or drinks their water on camera, and then you finish the bottle, of course, if either happens to pass away or they happen to agree on something. So there you go. Little helpful hint from the American Dufus channel on how to enjoy tonight's debate if you are absolutely not into politics at all and you're in a place where everybody else is watching. Travis Kelce chimed in a little bit ago, 8:39 p.m. to be exactly. As Travis said, can you imagine if I started making excuses for losing the Super Bowl before the Super Bowl? Yet this bitch behavior is Trump's bread and butter. Travis might not be a fan of the former president. Again, NBC News is reporting that the Pentagon is preparing to evacuate Americans from Lebanon. It's not going to, I told you a week ago that all of this was coming, that I had my source inside Israel told me everything that they were doing. And this is not going to be something that you're going to forget about. And it's going to be like, oh my gosh, yeah, I remember. No, this is going to be happening pretty soon. And we'll keep an eye on it. Here's what's been going on outside of CNN headquarters leading up to the debate. And let's give this a quick listen if we can.
You need the sign.
It says, kill y'all's belief systems before they get you all killed. It's a reset system. It's countdown to zero. Christianity, all the Abrahamic religions, all of them have doomsday prophecies. They're not for humanity. They're the countdown to end and reset humanity. What they've been talking about in the last 4 or 5 years about a great reset, this is not the first time this has occurred in America nor throughout the earth.
What are you voting for?
What am I voting for? I'm voting for get rid of all this bullshit and go build some gardens and give each other hugs.
All right, so there's a quick look around what was happening inside, or outside rather, the CNN building in Atlanta. Both candidates are there. We are but 1 minute away, allegedly, and now this it's supposed to start at 9 o'clock. Does that mean it will actually start at 9:01 or 9:02 in order to have the delay facilitated? I don't know. All right, I'm going to hop back over here to hop back over to the chat real quick and say hi to Fred. It smells like a cover up to Fred too. Yeah, I just don't. The concept of the 1 or 2 minute delay when normally live is 7 seconds. It just I don't know. It makes me suspect. Makes me sus. And we are set. We're ready to go. Thank you all for being here. And again, we're going to do this. And I'm going to try not to interrupt unless it's just something that just makes me absolutely have to. All right. Try to let everybody listen and judge for yourselves. And if you want to hop up here after the formal debate is over, if you want to hop up, glitch monitor here. I'm seeing me get cut out, and it may be maybe we get cut out, because I surely hope not, because this ought to be available to everybody in the world. The significance of deciding the leader of the free world, and it looks like Dana Bash. I know Dana. Never mind. Jake Tapper, looks like they have taken the debate moderator's desk on the CNN stage, and coverage will begin here soon. Again, this CNN is allowing those of us that are showing this. It is only through the goodwill of CNN, and we thank them for allowing the world to see that. CNN's going over the rules right now. 2 minutes to answer a question, 1 minute, or 2 minutes for a question, 1 minute for response, 1 minute for rebuttal. Candidate's turn, it's on. The opponent's turn, the mics are off. And I think CBS is probably 2 minutes on the closing statements. Biden will go first in closing statements, having lost the coin toss. Trump will have the final word. And it looks like we are ready to go. Bring up the volume, and here we go live.
And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Looks tired. Looks frumpy.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters
Much more energized when he walks on stage for one of
the
his
economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was not that. It's serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. Start out in the position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, but there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people in Pennsylvania, I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. Price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million
Biden's weak.
We're going to make sure we capture corporate greed during this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for a insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they can include beginning next year. And the situation is we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you. President Trump?
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID. And when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. But by the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce back jobs, a bounce back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world. And, the fact of the matter is that we found ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant. And the military, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
Am I allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want. with the minute that we give you. Follow up, you want to impose a 10 tariff on goods to the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down, and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. No, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing. And they don't know what they were doing. It was the worst, probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt. Well, so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job. Just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent, all of the things he's done. We've become like a third world nation, and it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country, and I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a four-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people. They cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex, but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, and getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided, supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor, and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states, let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that. But here's the deal. There's a lot of young women who are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters. It's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are raping and killing women. And it's a terrible thing. As far as the abortion is concerned, it is now back with the states. The states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting, and it's bringing it back to the vote of the people, which is what everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they didn't. But they would have. Everybody wanted it brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
Staying on the topic of abortion, President Biden, 7 states, I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the governor, former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true. The Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period, period, period.
Under Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years, and it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do? In fact, if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected, and the MAGA Republicans control the Congress, and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure they were the families are separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border legally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now, all terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere, all over the world, they're pouring in. And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming up in caravans.
President Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything crossing the border is one who came along and killed three, under his administration, killed an Al-Qaeda person coming in his administration, killed three American soldiers, killed three American soldiers. That's the only terrorist that's there. I'm not saying that no terrorist ever got through, but the idea they're emptying their prisons, we're welcoming these people, that's simply not true. There's no data to support what he said. Once again, he's exaggerating, he's lying.
President Trump, staying on the topic of immigration, you've said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed three people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the two greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world. And it had a huge impact on everything, not just border, on everything. He's the one that killed people with a bad water, including hundreds of thousands of people dying and also killing our citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state in the union because we don't have borders anymore. Every state is now a border. And because of his ridiculous, insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen before. And you're reading it like these three incredible young girls over the last few days. One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and they just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old. This is horrible what's taken place. What's taken place in our country, we're literally an uncivilized country now. He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know. He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we have to get a lot of these people out, or we have to get them out fast because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street. They're dying because he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care. He doesn't like the military at all. And he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse. I had the highest approval rating for veterans taking care of the VA. He has the worst. He's gotten rid of all the things that I approved, choice that I got through Congress, all of the different things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half because he's done all these great things that we did. And I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so many people at our border by allowing all of these people to come in. And it's a very sad day in America.
President Biden, you have the mic.
Every single thing he said is a lie. Every single one. For example, veterans are a hell of a lot better off since I passed the PACT Act. 1 million of them now have insurance, and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And he opposed. His group opposed that. We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq, living right next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in France for D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War II cemetery, World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
President Trump?
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say I'm at a cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taken better care. I'm so glad this came up and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
Four-star general standing to your side was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are in their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right, thank you so much.
Let's move to the topic of foreign policy. I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its third year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander in chief, if that's what you call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, a president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned. And so he's got no love lost, but he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine, never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything, no money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
I've never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, not when he was president. They attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where, if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want and do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I never said that.
For 1 minute, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine?
No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire. Not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, and by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Thank you. Moving on to the Middle East. In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages. Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward a proposal to resolve this conflict, but so far Hamas has not released additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward. Which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas, number one. They're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened? In Israel, we're finding that the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so there are 2 different things. Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden. You don't have to do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas, greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for using certain weapons among population centers.
Just going back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent $100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars of NATO. Said, Trump, incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any, they were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting you got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one who wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out of NATO. You're going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that our strength lies in our alliances as well. It may be a big ocean, but were we ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe? What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. See what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has ever been able to be contained just to Europe.
President Trump, just to follow up, would you support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see, but before we do that, the problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, they don't want anything that we have, but we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this, I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question, would you guard us against Russia at a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time? And they said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next months. But now we're in the same position. We're paying everybody's bills.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy. Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about, where he goes after his political opponent because he can't beat him fair and square.
You have 80 seconds left. My question was, what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say, but she's saying, oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor in writing, by the way, the mayor in writing turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it too, and you could feel it. And I said, they ought to have some National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her. And she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was, I don't know, she can't be very happy with her daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, I take full responsibility for January 6th.
President Biden?
Look, he encouraged those folks to go up on Capitol Hill. Number one, I sat in the dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours watching, begging, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll now forgive them for what they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their sentences and say that no. He went to every single court in the nation. I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court. And they said, no, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He did do a damn thing. And these people should be in jail. And they should be the ones who are being held accountable. And he wants to let them all out. And now he says if he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that it could be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people. When they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down many other cities, you go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done there with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that, they saw them coming, and they left immediately. What he said about this whole subject is so off. Peacefully patriotic. One other thing, the Unselect Committee, which is basically two horrible Republicans that are all gone now out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who were convicted, deserves to be convicted. The idea that they didn't kill somebody, just went in and broke down doors, broke the windows, occupied offices, turned over desks, turned them over statues. The idea that those people are patriots, come on. When I asked him the first two debates we had, first time around, I said, will you denounce the Proud Boys? He said, no, I'll tell them to stand by. The idea he's refusing, will you denounce these guys? Will you denounce the people we're talking about now? Will you denounce the people who attacked that Capitol? What are you going to do?
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor, having to do with his son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute to respond.
The idea that I did anything wrong relative to what you're talking about is outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before. Number three, the crimes that you are still charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Give you a minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number one. Number two, that was a case that was started and moved. They moved a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases, you know what they did? My poll numbers went up, way up. You know that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken. Hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows it's a scam, and it's a guy that's after his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, quote, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy. Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases down the road coming around. He's got a whole range of issues he has to face. I don't know what the juries will do, but I do know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you hear any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? Do you ever hear any presidents say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas? What got me involved to run in the first place after my son had died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when back in Germany. And the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother. And they asked him, they said, what do you think of those people? The ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones he said, I think they're fine people on both sides. What American president would ever say, Nazis coming out of fields, carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas, were fine people? And this is a guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are. The good things Hitler's done, that's what he said. This guy has no sense of American democracy.
President Trump.
Jake, both of you know that story has been totally wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on that story. He just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency, he's without question the worst president, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day, it came out where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that, and he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse to run.
President Biden.
And debunked. It happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time. And the idea that somehow that's the only reason I ran. I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods, carrying those torches, then he didn't deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president hasn't endorsed him. Why? They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
Thank you, President Biden. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
All right, we are on a break. First break of the debate. I'm assuming the only break of the debate. Thank you for tuning on. Thank you for clicking on. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. If it's your first time here, I greatly appreciate it. Chances are it's not. Chances are you know who I am already. And it's not like I'm a political expert, but I kind of am. Several things that I've got jotted down. The first being, do we understand why Robert Kennedy Jr. is nowhere near this debate? Do we understand that part? Why we are not shown an alternative? Number two, when I said 6 months ago, after I watched the debate between Governor Gavin Newsom from California and Governor Ron DeSantis from Florida, and asked myself, why are these two governors debating each other? They're not running against each other. They're not in any way, shape, or form in any kind of competition. Unless maybe they are. I've said multiple times, do not be surprised if one or both of these candidates, neither one of them is president and may not even be on the ballots. I think, without a doubt, in my personal political opinion, as well as an opinion as a citizen of the United States, as well as my opinion as a grandpa. Because see, when you reach that status, you no matter what age you are, you reach that status that it's about the future generations. It's no longer about you doing something fabulous in your future. Not that that's discounted, not that that's not a possibility. The focus has to be on the future. So, with that being said, speaking politically, speaking as a citizen, speaking as a grandpa multiple times, neither one of the people we are watching are qualified to be president of the United States. I don't think we will have to demand better. I think the powers that be will see, because Trump came out, he looked all frumpy and blah, 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 and optics matter. The way he walked on the stage, everything mattered. But he was strong in his speech. Biden came out and he looked like he wasn't sure if he was supposed to sit down and have pudding. And the optics through the entire first segment. And when Biden tried to go on the offensive, if you will, it just didn't work. We'll have more coming up. Right now, let's get back to tonight's debate. Thanks for watching again. We'll be back.
Long time. 3, we're providing housing for Black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. And in addition to that, we find that the impact on the choice that Black families have to make relative to childcare is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce Black childcare costs. I cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for childcare costs. We got to make sure, because when you provide those childcare protections, you increase economic growth because more people can be in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any black family first-time home buyer should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those black families and those black individuals who had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, doctor, and anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest is forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right. It's been very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New scam and all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden?
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back. 15% unemployment. He decimated the economy, absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation at the time. There were no jobs. We provided thousands of millions of jobs for individuals who were in all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they have health insurance. We have covered, the ACA has increased. I made sure that there are $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They've tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again, and they're going to try again if they win. You find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing anything, we put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on, but in inflation, he caused it by his tremendous malfeasance in the way he handled the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent challenge is the climate crisis. 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels. Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump, almost every police group. And what he's done to the black population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name, and he called it to them for 10, and they've taken great offense at it, and now they see it happening. But when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job, great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea, and it was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country, opportunity zones. And the biggest beneficiary are blacks. And that's why we have the best numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever, the best numbers. He's lost much of the black population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs, and it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
You've 38 seconds left. President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water and I want absolutely clean air. And we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever. And we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea that anything he said is true. I've passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history. We find ourselves, and by the way, black colleges. I came up with $50 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just don't have the money. But now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing for the environment. He pulled out of the Paris Peace Accord, Climate Accord. I immediately joined it because if we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point, where there's no way back. The only existential threat to humanity is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it. He must undo all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States. And I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones who was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it. And it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage. I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything? We're not able. The United States can't get its under control. One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant progress. By 2035, we will have cut pollution in half. We have made significant progress, and we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps for thousands of young people to learn how to deal with climate, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements of cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay.
Thank you.
And by the way,
so every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years to take to keep Social Security solvent.
yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Right now, everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I'm proposing that everybody, the millionaires pay 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well, no, that one enough will keep it solvent. But the biggest thing I'll do if we defeat this man there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanted to cut Social Security and Medicare both times. And that's what, and if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that he, I believe, supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing that allows them to have that insurance is the fact that they, in fact, are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is we're in a situation where we talk about education for Black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants by another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 toward their tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He could look you in the face. About so many other things too. And we mentioned the laptop. We mentioned Russia, Ukraine. Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. The losers and suckers story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country and they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid. They're putting them in our hospitals. They're taking the place of our citizens. What they're doing to the VA, to our veterans, is unbelievable. Our veterans are living in the street and these people are living in luxury hotels. He doesn't know what he's doing. And it's really coming back. I've never seen such anger in our country before.
President Biden.
The idea that veterans are not being taken care of, I told you before. And by the way, when I said suckers and losers, he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world. The reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession. And inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
President Biden, thank you so much. Let's turn to the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You'd pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put them there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border, that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now, all of a sudden, he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He's the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We're the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We have the finest military in the history of the world, the finest in the history of the world. No one thinks we're weak. No one wants to screw around with us. Nobody, number one. Number two, the idea that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking. Look it up or go online. 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who's the worst president in American history. One through best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did for virtually nothing to child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability of women and men or single parents to be able to go back to work. And we should encourage businesses to have.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable, if you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad. And they rate me, I'll show you, I will show you. And they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire. So everybody, including the two of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All my life, I'd grow up and I'd see politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Look, fact of the matter is that he's dead wrong about, he's increased the tariff, he will increase the taxes on middle-class people. I said I'd never raise a tax on anybody making less than $400,000. I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming in the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that are imported. Number two, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he's somehow helped the middle class. Middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one. Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you, President Biden.
You lost.
Thank you, President Biden. Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
To finish up, we now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries, and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country in every way. And then we had to get tough. And it was the drugs pouring across the border were it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot. And we were getting very low numbers, very, very low numbers. Then he came along. The numbers, have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways, but the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues, said, don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically. No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question is about Americans in the throes of addiction right now, struggling to get the treatment they need.
Well, this does pertain to it. He ended remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say a hostage. Now we have a hostage, a Wall Street Journal reporter, I think a good guy, and he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly. As soon as I take office, before I take office, I said by literally as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago, but Putin's probably asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases. We paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 50 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought off a lot of people. Well, the whole idea of computer chips, we used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and to bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States. And guess what? Those fabs, they call them, that to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow We are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us. All of our allies and those who he coddles up to, from Kim Jong-un, he sends love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you. Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, you know, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced him. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they've never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's it. Anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, you know how many?
I've seen you swing.
President Trump, we're going to
Let's not act like children.
to a specific concern that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins, and you will say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable?
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to. And I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment, because I wouldn't have been his political opponent, because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. But the only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation right now. We're a seriously failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want. There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is attack on all, and required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. Because we are a powerful nation. We have wonderful people. It's because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because of our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
President Trump, as I come back to you for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Just to finish what he said, if I might, Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it. He's not going to play games with me. He knew that. I got along with him very well, but he knew not to play games. He took nothing from me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me. And he's going to take Ukraine. And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this? He's got us in such a bad position right now with Ukraine and Russia. Because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked if I were
President Trump,
president.
the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these, but the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else in a nice location someplace. And again, no indictments, no political opponent stuff, because it's the only way he thinks he can win. But unfortunately, it's driven up my numbers and driven them up to a very high level because the people understand it.
Let's see what your numbers are when this election is over. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you continued, you appealed and appealed to courts all across the country. Not one single court in America said any of your claims had any merit, state or local, none. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There is no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea, if you lose again, you accepting anything, you can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
We'll be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate, live from Georgia.
All right, we are on break here from the CNN coverage, courtesy of CBS News. And hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. It is, we'll have a short break, and they will be back. I imagine they'll be back for closing statements as we're at the 1 hour and a half mark. That was the initial time that was negotiated. As Echo Romeo in the chat mentioned, the original negotiations, they were both going to be sitting down the entire time. And they would be much farther apart from each other than actually how everything ended up being constructed. And they ended up standing, obviously, those of you that have been watching, instead of sitting. And they also instituted at least a 1 minute delay in case of, I don't know why. As I've said before, I've covered a lot of, I've debated. I debated Mike Pence 3 separate times on television. ABC News was the moderator. It was a fairly big deal. And not only that, I've been to a lot of live events, both politically and in the media. And 7-second delay is in many areas, it's not even used anymore because the standards and practices were lowered so far that when they said a 1 minute delay, it hasn't proven, I don't think it's proven to be a factor, but I've been watching this pretty closely. If Trump did not have January 6th, all of the criminal things hanging over him. Now, that does not matter. That there are a lot of people that does not matter to, but that base of his is just that. It's a really good base when it comes to running in primaries. It's going to be hard to grow that base unless the opponent's Joe Biden. And that's the only two choices. Therefore, I've said this before. Something's going to happen. It will probably be during or very shortly after the convention upcoming here very soon in Chicago. And you're going to see it. You're going to see Gavin Newsom's face a whole lot more in national media. I'm just telling you that. Somebody messaged me earlier and said, why is Gavin Newsom all over CNN in this pre-debate? And I wasn't watching CNN. I was obviously been watching CBS's pre-debate, and everybody now gets the CNN feed. And we will now go back to that for the conclusion, I believe.
Number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience, or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair?
No.
The fact is that I said nobody even making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes, and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit. Number one, he's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic. And he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States of America. What I did when, for example, he wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare for us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400. No more than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal debt by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior all along. It's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that. I'm going to make sure that we have child care. We're going to significantly increase the credits people have for child care. I'm going to make sure we do something about what we're doing on lead pipes and all the things that are causing health problems for people across the country. We're going to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. All he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel. It was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never happened. Iran was broke. Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all the stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's putting a lot of those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like, even from a medical standpoint, right to try, where we can try space age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get, when you're terminally ill, now you can go and you can get something. You sign a document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible. Choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves, and they're living. And that's why I had the highest approval rating in the history of the VA. So all of these things, we're in a failing nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
Thank you, former President Trump, President Biden. Stay with us because we have full analysis of this debate. Anderson Cooper and Aaron Burnett starts now on CNN.
There we go. Had my mic on mute. All right, there we go. Full analysis starts on CNN for those of you that want to choose that option. For everyone else, thank you for sticking around. And I dropped the link earlier. If anybody does want to come up and give your opinion, I'll be giving mine here. And also reminding everyone that here were the rules for tonight's drinking game during the debate. And as we look down, it looks like you might be completely freaking sloshed if you played along, which I did not. But Biden called Trump a convicted felon. Check. Said, listen, folks, check. Tells us a childhood story that probably didn't happen. Check. We're protecting, saving democracy. Yep, that was in there. I don't think he made a joke about his age. I guess he did because he said, one time I used to be the youngest politician in the world, and now I'm the oldest. Not necessarily a good point to make, but nonetheless, okay, we'll give it a check. Start a sentence, but then with a completely different thought. Yeah. And he also broke Medicare apparently. Okay, now let's see what Trump people, everyone is saying. Oh yes, multiple times. If you did that every time he said that, you would be sloshed alone. I don't know if he said Sleepy Joe, probably did. Believe me. Oh yes, he said believe me multiple times. I don't think he insulted Jake Tapper. The jazz hands, without a doubt, you would be doing multiple shots for that. I don't know as either. Biden probably froze for 3 seconds. Definitely this the most important election was a check mark. Roundabout way, they both accused each other of anti-Semitism. Neither one of them drank any water, and neither one of them expired. I don't know if they agreed on anything or not, but so it is June the 27th. Okay, we are still a very long time away from the election. If the election were held tomorrow and there were only 2 choices, Donald Trump would win. If I were a Democratic operative if I were a member of a campaign, especially if I were actually running the campaign, I would not want to see the poll numbers tomorrow. Poll numbers are going to be devastating. They just are. And there are going to be people that are going to be Biden apologists. I honestly don't know how they can be, honestly, as honestly as anyone can honestly be. I honestly don't know how they can say Biden came anywhere close to winning this race. I also don't know how anybody on Fox can say that Trump was drugged or that Biden was drugged. If anybody was drugged, it was probably Trump, because he seemed awfully on point for this late in the night. But I don't think he was. I think he just got on a roll and realized he was going to dominate in this, and he dominated. There were times that Biden had that look of a dog's peeing on his shoe on the other side of the room, and he can't believe it's happening, and yet he's not going to do anything about it. He did. He had that, and optics matters so very much, especially politically. Why? Because there's no substance. You know, politics is all about optics and words and misinformation and propaganda, because in actuality, there's no substance. You're not really providing anything. You're telling people what they want to hear when they want to hear it, and trying not to get caught in too many situations where you're talking out both sides of your mouth. That's what these successful politicians do. Obviously, I've never been a successful politician. Doesn't mean I wasn't an effective one. But we've talked about that in the past. There's no need to get into that tonight. Now, Trump was strong throughout the entire debate, including the close, as far as oratory, as far as strength. And again, optics matter. It wasn't even close. This never should have happened. I know whose idea it was. It was Biden's idea. Biden challenged him. Biden came out and said, anytime, anywhere. And Trump said, okay, let's make it happen. And Nancy McMonarch, in our comments, I highlighted it at one point. Nancy said the DNC and the RNC should have corrected this, and neither one of these people should be a candidate. Again, I apologize to if you're offended, if you're a diehard Trumper and you're offended and you don't understand by now that not everybody's a diehard Trumper, and there are a bunch of people in this country that don't want either one. Okay, like I said at the very jump, if the election were tomorrow, Trump would win in a landslide. He would win enough states to get the Electoral College, which is what it takes. Keep that in mind. Just because you're in a red state and Trump wins your state significantly, speaking from experience, in a red state where Trump will win this state by a significant margin, there's not enough electoral votes in this one state to make him president, despite what you may think where you live. So you got to look at the whole big picture. And the big picture is there are a whole lot of Republicans, not Trumpers, Republicans, conservative Republicans that do not, and they're not talking about it. Somebody else, I think it was Patton McCrotch, and hi, Patton, by the way. Hi, everybody, by the way. Thank you all for watching. Chances are you're watching live. You're not watching on a rerun, because people don't rerun major live events like this. long running event. Anyway, I forget, what did Patton say? He said something that I was talking about. I don't remember what it was, but it was significant in the fact that it leads to the number of electoral states is going to come into play. And it wasn't Patton, it was Echo, I think. Gavin Newsom. All right. Gavin Newsom, I've predicted this for a long time. Gavin Newsom will end up being the Democratic nominee for president in 2024, and Pete Buttigieg will be his vice president. And you're going to see both of those faces a lot in the media coming up. That's just what I think is going to happen. Trump's going to have huge numbers tomorrow. And because that's just going to be the knee-jerk reaction. And then all the clips are going to start to come out, reminding everybody, Trump's going to get sentenced right before the Republican convention. And do we Republicans really want a convicted felon in prison to be our nominee? The diehard Trumpers will go to hell. Yes, we do. And we will kill you if you choose otherwise. And it will be a very interesting Republican convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm just saying. You all think that this is all wrapped up. And yes, it should have been corrected in last year. But that's not how the Democrats normally work. All right. They normally don't take the old people out. And I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. As I said, I'm a among other things, I'm a political analyst. I'm a U.S. citizen, and I'm a dad, and I'm a grandpa. And that's how I base my political decisions, not on parties. So I look at the parties objectively as possible. And what's going to happen is Trump's going to get a big bump tomorrow. I'm sure it's already happening in the immediate overnight polls. And that's going to trickle off as the stories start coming out, reminding everybody. Trump did say 2 days ago, I showed it on here. He said that if he loses, he's going to fight it again. And that's going to come out. It came out on my show. It's going to come out one of the major platforms or linear media, stuff like that when it gets down to it, people just aren't going to be able to vote for him. Him himself bringing up Charlottesville and racism and Nazis, Trump made some big errors, but I'm talking as, technically during a debate, things you would not say. He said a bunch of stuff he should not have said, but it didn't matter because Biden looked so weak. People, the majority of individuals, average people, weren't paying that close attention to all the nuanced stuff that I tend to pay attention to. And Trump's going to get a bump. It's going to be a temporary bump. But that bump's going to be such that the clamor that Joe Biden is unfit. The clamor is going to be Joe Biden is unfit to continue in office. First of all, that's going to come out from the Republican side. And I'm just saying you here's what's coming. All right. He's unfit to continue. And and then the Republicans or Democrats are going to go, no. He can make it through the end of the term, but we do have to do something. And we got to figure something out. This is all behind the scenes stuff. All right. You're not going to see any of this. It's just like when you show up at the state convention and they're going to decide in a vote on a Saturday morning who's going to be the delegates to go to the national convention, and you're told on Thursday how much money you have to have and everything because you're going to be a delegate to the state convention. You might think that things are scripted, if you will. So a lot of things go on behind the scenes. And these are private organizations. Both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party are private organizations. They're not even public. You don't even have a right to join either one of them. I don't know how many people actually know that. It probably doesn't matter because most of us are not going to join any particular party. As far as getting as active as is necessary to be successful or attempt to be successful. Behind the scenes, everybody with two brain cells in the Democratic higher ups are in group texts or group chats or group FaceTimes or whatever it is the kids use these days, saying, what the hell are we going to do? How are we going to make this work? Because we can't do this. We can't do this. We can't do this. 3 minutes into the thing, I'm going, phew, man, I'm feeling so much better about what I've said that chances are neither one of these guys, it could end up neither one of them's on a ballot. And if Trump's on the ballot, at one point, Trump was the only person Biden could beat. At one point, it was if Nikki Haley's got to take Trump down so the Republicans have a chance. Remember that? That's how it was. It's not like that now. Biden can't beat anybody, and he can't beat Trump. And they can't risk that. They can't risk that. It's not, well, he could beat Trump. If they'd have gave him a 12-ounce can of Mountain Dew, Biden might have been able to be functional for the first 10 minutes of the thing. But I think they were so caught up on the fact that they got baited and trolled by the Republicans about how they were making all these cocktails and everything of amphetamines for Biden so that he'd be awake through the whole thing and he'd perform like he did in the State of the Union. Obviously, they didn't give him the same thing they gave him at the State of the Union if they gave him something at the State of the Union, because what you got tonight was, well, listen, that's the most malarkey I've ever heard. You had to strain to hear him. You felt bad for him. You felt like the guy should not be on a stage. Trump shouldn't either. And Trump said he didn't want to do it. I think the word's getting around to Trump that, you can't win a general election and you're not going to be running against Biden. I think that buzz is getting to him too. Because Trump mentioned it tonight. I'd rather be somewhere else doing something else. And no indictments. So don't be surprised if there isn't a plea deal somewhere along the line that, okay, look, if I agree to drop out of the race and no indictments and I can play golf and I can do my Trump stuff and never get in politics again, can we do that? I'm just saying the guy don't want to go to prison. And a lot can happen between now, June 27th, and Election Day, November 5th, as well as Sentencing Day, conventions, both Republican first and Democrat second. Conventions this year, both of them are liable to be on fire, possibly literally. All right. Us on the right side have played a better game of chess. Ew. Okay, well, all right. Two different Bidens for sure, no doubt. Absolutely, no doubt. And I'm really interested to see how this is spun, because I cannot think of a single time, and this is very rare, because normally when you objectively watch, like I try to watch political events, you notice, because you have to, you notice the positive things or the points, if you will. Okay. I do that sometimes, like I do like a Franklin scale, and one side and the other side, and I just point for each side as it happens. I can't think of a single time where Biden was strong. The only thing he hit on, the only thing that's going to resonate on an extended period is the convicted felon, is the J6, is the stuff I have mentioned before, that most people in the middle will never get over it. And it was Patton McCrutch that said something as well. He said that conservatives generally don't answer polls, and that's true. And a lot of conservatives are showing up on non-conservative linear media, talking about how they are the new silent majority, that they can't vote for Trump. They just don't talk about it. They just don't talk about not voting for Trump. And that's the Nikki Haley's. And Trump came out and made a big mistake. He came out and said, we don't want you Nikki Haley voters. We don't need you Nikki Haley voters. And he doesn't understand the grand political thing, obviously. But he's got people that do or should. And you've got to unite your party, okay? Each candidate has to unite their party to begin with. And if your party's not united, you got a chance to lose to the middle. You got a chance to lose to the opposition more than likely, but you got a chance to lose to the middle. And again, I said earlier, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was nowhere on that stage, and I don't think either one of the candidates would have wanted him up there. It had been a lot more entertaining, but this just came off to me as, this will go down in history as the political death knell of Joe Biden. And if I am wrong, and if the Democrats do not correct the course, and if the Democrats do try to rally behind Biden, this will indeed be a landslide of historic proportions. And if heaven forbid, if something happens on our home soil that precludes having an election and Biden is still in office, I'm going to be real sus. Just saying. All right. Let me go back over here. BTM would agree. After Trump was found guilty, I saw people who weren't going to vote for Trump change their minds. Okay, well, you got to remember what we, what we see in our own. I'm sorry, somebody's up there trying to. Oh, I know. Jill Biden's up there talking. I just looked up. I switched over to CNN on the big screen. Jill Biden is up there talking, and Joe's standing there. Oh, now he's going to talk a little bit. All right. Well, I've heard him talk enough tonight, and that was one of the absolute poorest performances in a debate I've seen, and I debated. That was one of the poorest performances I've seen. I don't know if I've seen other than looking back and studying political history, specifically the Nixon-Kennedy debate. Nixon just melted down on screen, literally. Kennedy had makeup on and hair coiffed and was all, tailor suit and stuff. And Nixon came out with a 5 o'clock shadow and sweated like a pig and lost the election because optics matter. And tonight, the optics were definitely in favor of Donald Trump. And optics matter. Now, there was a reason this debate took place before both conventions. Keep that in mind, y'all. Look at the grand scheme of things. Normally, in any other time, you do not have any debates until after both conventions are over. The nominations of both president and vice president are official, and that's when it's debate season. The Presidential Committee on Debates, they do this. It's kind of a ritual, and they were kind of pissed that this happened before the debates or before the conventions. But there was a reason for it. We may not see it now. Wink, wink, nod, nod. But there was a reason for it. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you all for being here. Greatly appreciated. I've been on for 2 hours and 33 minutes. Going to take a break, chill out for a little bit, and have a big old drink of Mountain Dew like Joe Biden should have had before he went on stage. Oh, I love y'all. Thank you. It's a dark world. Try to be a light. Try to remember that there's going to be a point in our country, the United States of America, where it is more important to be a U.S. American citizen than it is to be a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, a liberal, conservative. And at some point, we're going to have to get back to back and have each other's back and not stand face to face and scream at each other. We're not there. We may never get there. But for our nation to survive, in my opinion, at some point, we better be able to do that, because we've got too many enemies, foreign and domestic. And there are a lot of foreigners that are now domestic. Just saying. All right. Love you all. Thank you again. It's a dark world. Try to be a light. Be on tomorrow night with Chris, either 9 or 10 o'clock, depending on what happens at the festivals in the park, concerts in the park tomorrow night. It's ELO, Electric Light Orchestra tribute show. So I don't know, I may be home early. Love y'all. Thanks for hanging out.